Just before we start the episode, I just wanted to let you all know that we have started a Game Soup Patreon. So for all dedicated slurpers, you can support the podcast for £1.50 a month. That gets you early access to all episodes as soon as they are finished recording. So you can get them up to a week early, depending on when whoever's editing gets them finished. I'll get out the way. There's a link in the description. Here comes the rest of the proper episode. Thanks. Welcome to Game Soup. This is the game design podcast where we throw ideas in the pot and see what's cooking. I'm Chloe Montgomery.
And I'm Caleb Dice. I might bake something today. Sorry, cooking just reminded me. I have a bunch of birthdays coming up, and I might bake one thing and then split it in three for the 3 birthdays.
That's so lazy. I love it.
No, I mean, okay. The thing is, it's my sister's birthday tomorrow at the time of recording. We'll be gone by then. Sister's birthday, Wednesday. Then I'm going to Oxford, where 2 people I know are having a joint birthday. And then that's on like Saturday. And then also on like Thursday, Friday, I'm seeing Metamore, who has a birthday, like technically I think after I see it. But I'm like, I can't bake 3 things. I simply don't have the kitchen space. Or the stomach to eat that much.
You see, last night I baked some cookies. The way that I do a lot of my baking is get the quick, like, here is a block of cookie batter from Tesco or whatever, cut it into 8 pieces, put it on a tray, bosh. Or like the prefab baking bags for like cake mix. It's like, add oil and water.
Yeah, the thing is, because my housemate is nominally vegan, it means I feel like a cunt if I don't make something they can eat, so that kind of takes off the cheap options.
But it's not for their birthday.
No, but like, I don't know, like, at least for one of the things, that's just going to be people who are at this house, which is me, them, and 2 other people. That's not... If I take off an entire person who can eat a third of that, that's like...
Oh, if they're coming to your house, then fine, but, yeah.
I mean, then, like, they're also going to the party on Saturday. And to be fair, ordinarily I would not nominally bother making, like, vegan baking for my sister, who is vegetarian, but definitely not vegan. But... it's the thing of like, well, the only way I could do non-vegan baking is if I bake a separate thing. And that's more effort than making one vegan thing, which I split into 3. Like the fucking Triforce of baking. I don't know, I've never played any Zelda. Is that an accurate reference I just made?
Yeah, you bring the 3 pieces of the Triforce together to make a better thing, basically.
I'm so smart.
I think you want to put, like, icing over the top of it or something to hide the cuts.
Yeah, I mean, that's if I do a cake, yeah, because it does...
if you're not doing a cake, okay.
I don't know if I'm doing a cake, I've not decided. But yeah, I'm like,
it's
it
just
does
like
look
you
a
turn
bit
up to a
scummy
birthday party. Turn up to a birthday party with a pre-cut cake. It's like, did you steal half my birthday cake?
Yeah, whereas if I just do, like, I don't know, muffins or cookies or something, and I just split the batch into 3, nobody needs to know what fucking happened. But yeah, I feel like for most of these situations, I'd get away with even the really obviously lazy thing, because I think people would just be like, oh, you did something.
2 cakes, yeah.
Who knew? Game Soup.
Game Soup, I mean, it's supposed to be about games, but...
This is the most we've stuck to the cooking metaphor. I feel every week we start off this podcast, I say my name, and then I just launch into... things I've got babbling. Going on.
Yeah. Listen, last night in bed I had an idea for a game and I want to run it past you.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay. Yeah. Straight. Let's bring it.
So for the longest time I've been trying to think of what is another thing we can put into the Goblin Country ecosystem. You've got your goblins, you've got your kobolds. what is another small commune of fantasy characters that have their own ways of doing things and they interact with the outside world. My thought was, what if we do a game about a fantasy church? And so your different characters are like the head priest and the paladin and the new recruit and the priest who's been there for years and is all a bit past it, and like the nun or whatever. And you've got... It's a bit of a Father Ted, I will admit. But like there's this one bit in Baldur's Gate 3 where you have to like investigate a murder in a church. And like meeting all of the different characters in the church, they were all kind of fleshed out a little bit, but not like as much as some of the other characters in the game.
I love that when someone starts giving examples of characters in a church, you can kind of tell their religious background a bit. Like you just start listing examples, and I'm like, oh yeah, clothes race Catholic.
Yeah. Listen, all of my RPG characters either have some religious bent to them or some trauma or whatever.
They're either just like happily religious or have Catholic guilt regardless of their religious status.
Yeah, I'm a drow who used to worship Lolth, but also I have Catholic guilt about that.
Oh, yeah. Not all of my characters. All of my characters are broadly like, an answer to the question, what if I, Kayla, was a slightly more selfish person?
Yeah.
I only realised that in therapy, and I got told psych, and then I connected that to all my RPG characters. But so it's a church. Are you just like a church of humans, but in a fantasy realm? Is that the...
Well, I don't know if you're all humans. Like, maybe one of your things could be, one of the playbooks, as it were, could be the sort of outsider who's trying to become part of this clergy. And I think, like, you've got playbooks for, like, the local congregation who you, like, need to help out with their prayers and whatever. And then you've got, like, the wider fantasy world. And, like, adventurers coming in, like, I need your biggest prayer.
My biggest prayer is too strong for you, adventurer.
Yes, exactly. Thank
Go
you.
to another church.
Mistress, prayers are too powerful for you, wizard.
So you're imagining this like, kind of like playing as a game, like in the same way Goblin Country and Kobold Country do, in terms of, you know, your style of BOB with the clock.
See, I don't know if it has the clock, but maybe it's like if you don't help out enough people, then maybe the congregation gets a bit pissed with you, or like the Demon Lord rises again or something. I don't know, you know?
For some reason, I have no idea why my mind went to this. My mind? What the fuck? I have no idea why my mind went to this, where it's like, it's a clock, and when it ends, Henry VIII closes the monasteries.
Yeah, the king decides.
I feel that changes it less from about religious guilt to more about religious persecution, which I feel is a different, very different kind of game.
Yeah. I think it's not necessarily about guilt, it's just kind of like, as with all the country games, it's kind of like you are kind of an outsider, you're trying to find your place in the world. Do
Looking
people get you?
Belonging outside belonging.
Whoa.
Whoa.
So, in my head, it's just called Clerics. Because, like, you could have that on a big board at a convention, and it's like, hey, I play a cleric in my Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Clerics, but the home life, implicitly.
Yeah, exactly. What do the clerics
fun.
do between adventures? Well, they take confessions. They baptized a child last week.
Yeah. Horrible SEO. Because you can't even type Clerics TTRPG.
Oh, that's true.
It would need to be Clerics TTRPG, Biscuit, Chloe Montgomery, Plumtree, Bisque Cleric.
H.I.O.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, maybe we need a better name than just Clerics.
Clerics is a fun name, though.
Yeah, it feels like a comedy DVD.
I'd say, I am admittedly way too fond of this. I was going to be like, name, subtitle.
Yeah, but that's hard to remember. It's like, oh, it was a game about clerics. You're in a church.
Yeah, that's the thing. In my mind, I'm like, oh, the subtitle gives it that. Oh, yeah, you can search for it. But I guess if the main thing you're going to remember is probably...
It's like skirmish, wallet-friendly wargaming. People only remember the skirmish.
Yeah. Do you think it's a bad thing that you don't have, like, easy searchableness for skirmish? Like, do you think it's hurt you?
Oh, it absolutely killed the game. Like, we would have had a second edition if it weren't called that.
Okay, so yeah, maybe we do need to workshop away from Clerics.
Like, we've definitely talked about doing a second edition where we would just call it, like, wallet-friendly wargaming second edition.
Wallet skirmish?
Where...
Yeah, fair, yeah.
Like, and we'd say it's, like, in the skirmish system or something, but...
I get what you mean, yeah. Did you make a Moomin army for skirmish?
We did make a Moomin army for the Patreon, yes.
You made Moomins fight.
No, like, they have a sub-game where they have to do, like, little adventures. And if you complete, like, 3 random adventures, then you win. So it's like, get to the other side of the board. Make friends with one of the enemies, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, give me some Clerics playbooks.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about. I want to work out what the 6 playbooks and the 6 setting elements are. So I think I don't know if we have, like, a head priest role. I think that's maybe a bit too... I'm the boss character. So...
yeah, I was going to say, yeah, and I can see why you'd avoid that. And then I was like, wait, you literally have a boss in Goblin Country, though.
Yeah, but they're a bit of a Blackadder sort of comedy boss.
Yeah, that's true. You are just way more certifiably inside. So is the head priest a setting element, then?
I think so. Like, you've got to... Like, occasionally the head priest will come to the church and you've got to make sure you're doing all your... I'm trying to think of a church word. You're preaching correctly. Are you properly preaching the word of Lathander?
Okay, so you've got one setting element, the head cleric and the head priest, and they also presumably can imply stuff about, like, the wider body you belong to.
Exactly, yeah. I'm going to start writing this down.
So I feel we should also throw out here, you... have your Catholic background. I don't really have a religious background, so I'm going to be pulling from the ether or television, really. Is just
exactly. So this is why I wanted to talk to you about it, because you kind of have this outside looking in thing, whereas maybe I'm just talking really, like, inside baseball, talking about, like, homilies and catechisms and stuff.
Yeah. Whereas my experience with religion is I've taught at 2 schools which had religious relationships. One was a Jewish school. The other was like it was not nominally, but it was based in an Orthodox Greek church. So, like, there's that, but also that's always like, it's me, the strange outsider. But,
who doesn't quite get all the things, but I respect your yarmulkes.
I remember when it was Christmas when I was working at the Greek Orthodox school, and so we went to a thing, and someone turned to me and was asking, like, "Is this weird for you being in a Greek church specifically?" And I'm like, I think if you think that's the part that I'd find strange, you've so misjudged my vibe. You've so misjudged me by the idea. Obviously, you're very familiar with how British churches work, and I'm like, no.
But I was about. You must be COE.
Yeah. Was one of my primary schools that, I think? But I think I was only there for 3 years. I was going to be like, the piano player? Is that a thing?
I think...
Or is that usually...
You could have, like, the organ player, whatever, but, like, a lot of smaller churches might not have that. Like, quite a few years when I was growing up, we didn't have an organ player, but we did when I was a really young kid, and we did when I was a teenager. So... I don't know what happened to the organ player in the time between, but... Was it
the same guy? Did he go on an adventure? There.
They were up a big staircase. I never really got to see them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, just... This is also me about to further expose foolishness. Like, is this a game where you are all playing people who have a role in the church? Or is it an amount, I don't know what, or is an amount of players just people who are church goers rather than people who have a role?
The parish, which is the word for the church goers and the no-bar community, at least in Catholicism, is one of the setting elements.
Okay, so then that means all of your other things are going to be people who work in...
Yeah, so let's work out some of the things. So you've got the old priest who's been there for years and he's a bit past it all. Does he really still believe in Lathander? Who knows? Even though Lathander actively does works in front of him. He makes his hand glow. But, like, is that just magic, though? I think we've got the newbie who's eager to prove his worth. I think maybe we've got the paladin who's a bit of a grognard. He follows all the rules to the letter.
He's someone who's probably only implicitly here for a stay, rather than, like, actively part of the community in the same way. My mind has just gone to, like, gritty social realist dramas, as it often does in my work process, which is funny for the fact that I don't think I have many stuff which could be described as gritty. But I was like, oh yeah, isn't that a trope of someone just being like a fuck up staying with the church while things are going? And then I was like, the prodigal son? Could someone be the prodigal son?
Someone who's left the church and has come back, I guess.
Or someone who is a black sheep of the church but has more of a relationship. Black sheep.
I'll write it down. I don't know if it's anything, but
I don't know. We hit the limits of my knowledge, which is so easy to find.
Do we wrap the old priest into the sort of nun character?
Okay, help me out here, Catholic girl. What is the difference between a nun and a priest?
A nun is more like a monk.
Right. But monk and nun, the only difference is just gender.
And like social role, but I've never met a monk, so lol.
Yeah, interesting on that. Okay.
So basically, the priest is allowed to run a service and is allowed to baptize people and do weddings and stuff. The nun, at least in my experience, has more of a social role in the church, in that they like maybe run the charity sales, or like if you need advice you maybe can go to the nun as well as the priest. It's more of a vocational thing, because being a priest isn't a vocational thing obviously, but it's more of a thing where it's like, oh, I'm giving up a lot of things in my life to show dedication to God. So like there was a nun at my secondary school who she took her wages for like being able to pay her rent and get food and stuff, and everything else went to the church.
So I think the way you're describing, I'm like, no, I definitely think you separate out the nun / the monk, who I guess could be similar archetypes, away from the priest, because I'm like, yeah, that's got to be a lot about like sacrifice and devotion, rather than the priest being... They like parachute priests into places. Well, I guess implicitly you're a bit less in a modern setting, but like...
How do you mean that?
I don't know. I was going to say, don't they like parachute priests into places if it's like, oh, hey, this priest moved on. We send a message to the main church and they'll tell a priest to move here and do this job.
No, that's still a thing, at least in my experience.
Well, more I was going to say, is that more a thing in the modern world than it was in the D&D, which is implicitly always a bit unmodern, vaguely medieval, sort of? Not really, I don't know.
I think the D&D fantasy world's a bit anachronistic in that sort of thing.
Fair, you could get away with
you
that.
You could certainly have, like, oh, we need somebody to go proselytize in shithole newbie town.
Yeah.
Will you go preach the good word?
I think maybe there's something... Like, if you were wanting to separate those characters more cleanly, beyond being like, oh, about devotion versus about, like, running the thing as a thing. Yeah. It could also be the element of, like, someone who is not from the community, but has now been given this very important part. So maybe that's a pick list decision.
Yeah. It's just the known character sort of also has this sort of, like, cultural idea of being, like, a bit bitchy. Like, she can kind of get away with stuff. Like, she's not the priest. She's just a woman who loves God a lot.
I've seen Dairy Girls. That's another point where this is just me mentioning ways I can contribute to this.
No, exactly. I was definitely alluding to Dairy Girls.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of another example of it, but...
No, I get what you mean. I was gonna say something. So is this game at all like about if you're all like members of the church? At least a lot of those members. Is this like about celibacy at all?
I don't think so. Because, like, if you're a clergy of the God of Love,
Oh yeah,
I don't think that's, like, hard and fast rule or whatever, ever.
fair.
Like,
So I guess probably for a lot of like the nun, the fun thing is figuring out like, what do the oaths look like when someone is a nun of this specific weird god?
yeah. Like, the God of Wine has different nuns than the God of Death.
Do you
Like,
have a list of gods who are separate from setting elements?
I think that is entirely down to the players because, like, I think this is a game for, like, fleshing out a religion in your world. If you wanted to, like, run it as part of a campaign or whatever. I like the idea that, we want to work out who the church members are in my RPG town. Let's run a game of Clerics.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, how many have we listed now? Like 4?
So we've done 5. We've got the old priest who is a bit, am I still believing in Lathander or whatever?
Yeah.
We've got the newbie who's eager to prove his worth.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the paladin who's steadfast in his belief, but is maybe not here for a long time. Maybe he has different ideas about the way to follow this god as the established members of this community. We got this known character. You suggested a black sheep. I don't know.
You're uncertain on it. I did just think of something else though. Groundskeeper.
Groundskeeper. Yeah, they're maybe not religious at all, but they're still part of the community.
Yeah, and often kind of have a role that's not necessarily appreciated because it's less intellectual or spiritual, but also is very important for, anything being able to function. Guess you could implicitly also kind of make them an undertaker as well.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. It's like if the garden outside the church looks like crap, then what does that say about your church?
Yeah. I think Groundskeeper's definitely an interesting one to have.
I think that's in the list.
Are there any you're uncertain about?
Well, I think
you can go above
what does
6.
The black sheep,
Oh yeah, I know, but
what does the black sheep do?
I guess that's the thing. In my mind, that is more about the fact of churches caring for people sometimes who stays.
I think that could be a setting element then.
Yeah.
I think instead of the black sheep, I think we have like a member of the clergy who's like kind of a PTA mom. They're kind of a Karen. They kind of butt their way into the conversation of these head priests and whatever.
So maybe someone who is not. I know we said like, the parish is probably a setting element, but maybe there's one character where it's like over-involved parishioner.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is a bit of a. You are not going to get this reference, but it's a bit of a Mary Cooper in Young Sheldon.
Yeah, I didn't get that reference, and I wasn't prepared for what it would be to.
In that Sheldon's mom works at the church. She's not a priest or anything. She just does the bookkeeping.
You a big Young Shellhead?
I mean, we're watching it. We're on season 2.
What spurred this?
We what like how I don't know if you have TikTok at all. I know you have TikTok. I don't know if you scroll on TikTok, but you get just random clips of TV shows, and I would just end up watching little clips of Young Sheldon. And Alyssa just like one day was like, "If we're watching Young Sheldon properly, or just stop watching these clips." So we started watching it properly.
You decided the angle of watching it properly. I see.
Because like the clips were pretty good, and the actual show is really good actually.
I've heard some people say the whole show reads as kind of weird because it's like Young Sheldon gets development that is clearly like does not stick.
Yeah, these are different characters. This is not old Sheldon but young. This is a different guy. Unless like Sheldon, when he goes off to college or something, just stops masking and loses all of these abilities gained. Because like young Sheldon is very clearly autistic.
Yeah,
but it's like it's just a nice show about like an autistic kid and his family who don't quite get him, but try their best, growing up in like the late 80s to 90s.
Fun, I see. And so in many ways, we're taking some of that young Sheldon influence and putting it in Clerics.
Sure. Well, we've just lost our entire audience now after the 2-minute tirade about young Sheldon. But it's one of the most popular shows in America. I don't know what to tell you.
So you reckon, you're firmly of the opinion of, like, our audience will not respect you for being a young Sheldon fan.
Nobody respects young Sheldon heads.
I mean, I'm not saying I do.
It's the most oppressed
I'm not going to lie to
minority.
you on our podcast. Oh.
Right, setting elements. We have the head priest. We have a parish. Alyssa's coming up and she's looking at me like, why are you talking about young Sheldon?
It's a bit deserved, but... Okay. Is the building a setting element?
I think maybe, yeah, because you could have, like... like a pick list of, like, what's wrong with the church. Like, what's wrong with the church building? Like, oh, it's crumbling down. Oh, it's not very well insulated. There's some graffiti.
Yeah.
There's rats in the basement or whatever.
I feel like, yeah.
Good...
And as well as a pick list of, something unique and memorable about the church.
Yeah, really good church organ. The stained glass is inspirational. A miracle was performed here once, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the building, the parish, the sort of head priest.
The god itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like,
with, I guess, like, the suggestion of, like, oh, here's these abilities, you can really, like, overwrite the setting element entirely with something from your own game. If you're doing that.
I don't think, like, any of it's, like, if your god is the god of fire, you can set things on fire. I think it's, like, show your works or whatever. Or, like...
Yeah. Miracle.
I don't know. Inspire somebody.
Yeah. Is there then a setting element that is something that relates to, I guess, the setting, but is more about, like, the thing you're, like, outside of? Is it, like, local government?
Yeah, I think maybe, like, the fiefdom. Is that the word? I think we'll put.
I think you say
government.
fiefdom, but yeah.
I wrote lolcat government, so.
Lolcat government. Oh, if we weren't at the half-hour mark, I'd be like, okay, next step, we figure out what the hell the game Lolcat Government is.
That's next week. So we have 5. I think I want 6 to be adventurers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Who come and are like, we've already done the bit about the strongest potion. Yeah, that's 6 on each. I'm happy with that.
You did say something about, like, when I had suggested that black sheep element, and I was like, I'll think about, people who are being directly cared for. Maybe that's saying there's less its own element and more like a thing in a pick list for the parish.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, like members of the parish pick list, choose 3. One of them is somebody you have to look after.
Makes sense. Is this a one-game episode?
I think it is. I'm happy enough to just call this Clerics, but
yeah,
if you have, I think if you have a better, more SEO-able name, I'm happy to hear it.
The thing is, I think it should involve the word cleric, because you're right that you are to some extent sideways pitching this to D&D heads. Cleric country doesn't make sense, but like
Cleric town, no.
A day, like Cleric, a day in the life. That's not really... Well, maybe. But...
meet the Clerics.
Clerics at home.
I love that store. It's where we got all our things for Holmes when he's doing dress-ups as a priest. Listen, write in with your ideas for... Yeah.
Clerics. We're gonna move away from trying to name these games, especially when we spend like 10 minutes of an episode going and then we later down the line always decide didn't actually like that name that much.
Listen, it makes editing a lot easier when there's big blank empty bits.
True. I think it's really telling that the 2 games you and I have taken from the Game Soup kitchen to the page we have both renamed almost instantly.
I don't know if I talked about Mouse Quest last week. But
Fuck.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you might have, but maybe not
Yeah.
in full. Or maybe we talked about it off mic because I said I read it and I liked it.
Yeah. Well, I wrote Meister Lending. It's called Mouse Quest. Coming soon? Question mark. I've commissioned art for it, so I bloody hope it's coming soon? Question mark.
That's exciting.
Probably not for Zine Month, but afterwards? Question mark.
I think, yeah, that sounds smart. Oh yeah, this will come out in the middle of Zine Month, won't it?
Yeah.
Because we now have a lead for the first time in ages. I'm currently crowdfunding something. I really hope it's going well. Anything you want to say before we wrap up? Because I feel like that's a really solid in the can episode.
I'm pretty happy with that.
Is this going to be the second game you actually write?
Probably, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me know in the comments what you thought of my brand new microphone that I sold lots of games for. By which I mean my PlayStation games. I sold them to CEX so that I could buy a discounted Blue Yeti.
But I sold my microphone so I could buy you a bunch of PS4 games from CEX.
Gift of the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Game Soup. I said the sign off, Chloe. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
End the podcast. Thank you. I was kind of teeing you up for it.